que os fãs brasileiros já aceitaram a derrota. Pessoal, olha eu aqui de novo. Bom, estou num formato um pouco diferente do que o pessoal novo tá acostumado a ver aqui do canal, né? É um formato de notícias, mas não saiam no canal, não se desinscrevam ainda. Eu só vou trazer esses vídeos aqui porque estamos realmente mais próximo do Olímpia e eu não posso deixar de trazer algumas notícias, mas o outro conteúdo que vocês curtem ainda vai continuar, tá? Porém, hoje eu vou trazer aqui pra vocês o que o Nick, do canal Nick Strength and Power, comentou a respeito dos fãs brasileiros. Segundo o Nick, os fãs brasileiros já aceitaram a derrota. Os fãs brasileiros já estão olhando pro Chris Bumstead e pensando, rapaz, não vai dar não é esse ano, vamos desistir porque Ramon é segundo no máximo. E bom, segundo o Nick, é isso que ele tá tendo a impressão através dos comentários dos brasileiros. Mas bora dar uma checada melhor nisso aí? Vou deixar o vídeo rodando aí pra vocês. Fiquem com o vídeo.
Alright, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, obviously the big one of the week, is probably the fact that we got the first real posing update of Chris Bumstead at 4 weeks out from the Olympia, where you can actually see his physique. No sweatshirt, no tank top, and actually hitting poses in this one, albeit they are men's physique poses, kind of jokingly. Which was the funny part of this update to me, is even though he's joking around, he's hitting men's physique poses, he's not even hitting classic poses. It was funny to me that he still actually looked really impressive in this update, not even trying. You know, we talk a lot about Chris's size for classic physique, how he's tall, how he's a little bit more muscular than everybody else, but the main thing that always really impressed me the most, and I think that really makes Chris's physique stand out from the rest, in addition to the obvious size, is the width of his lats, in particular from the front. I remember when Chris first hit the scene a couple years ago, my favorite pose that Chris would hit was the front lat spread, which isn't even a mandatory pose in classic physique, but he, even at that time, early in his career, had one of the most impressive front lat spreads in terms of the width that he showed off from the front, the taper that he had, the small waist with those crazy lats from the front. And I point that out to say, when he's hitting these men's physique poses, you see that exact same thing happening here, that crazy width that's visible in his lats from the front that contributes to that insane taper that he's got. And I always think it's interesting when I see an update from Chris, and I think it looks impressive. I think it's interesting to go to some of the Brazilian bodybuilding pages that are either in Portuguese or Spanish and see what they posted about Chris Bumstead, or what that update, what their opinion of that update was, and then read some of the comments, translate them, because it's interesting to see if anybody would be biased against Chris and want Chris to lose. It would probably be the Brazilian fans, because they want Ramon to win. But I think most of the comments, I saw this comparison on Brazil Bodybuilding News, C-Bum versus Ramon. They post one of Ramon's recent updates versus Chris's, a still shot from that video. And when you read through a lot of those comments on that post, some of the ones that are in Portuguese, there's a lot of Brazilian fans saying, I don't think Ramon's going to win this year. So there's even Brazilian fans saying things like, it's not even close, Chris is gigantic, Chris is massive, Chris is incredible, and people saying, you know, only when Chris retires will Ramon be able to win. So I think it's interesting when Chris posts an update that's really impressive to read some of the Brazilian comments, because like I said, if anybody would want to downplay the impressiveness of a C-Bum update, it would be them. But if you look at some of those Brazilian pages, even the Brazilian fans are like, well, maybe next year, Ramon. Which, to me, is really quite a big part of the legacy that I think Chris is going to leave behind when and if he does retire this year after the Olympia. Is not only did Chris win the most classic physique titles so far, but during Chris's era, he was just dominant and really undisputed. I don't really think there's been a year that Chris has won the Olympia where there was a significant amount of people saying he shouldn't have won. I think every time Chris has won has really been pretty dominant, and every year you don't really see much conversation of, oh, this is the year Chris is going to lose it. It's always more of a conversation of, well, who's the guy that's going to be second this year? That seems to change more, and does change more, than Chris winning does. Because Chris winning is really the only thing that has stayed the same since he started winning as far as the placings. And even with all this discussion about Ramon and Wesley after the Arnold, even that discussion when talking about Ramon and Wesley is mostly which one of these guys is going to be second this year. It's more like, does Wesley have a shot at being second instead of Ramon? It's not even really a conversation of, will either of these guys beat Chris Bumstead? It's really which one of these guys will be second, which when you think about that, it's really pretty impressive that that's the conversation surrounding Chris almost every year. Now, next up in the news, here's a guy that we haven't talked a whole lot about. We got several